Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Allison Gillespie. I am on the board of Bike Maryland, and we are thrilled tonight to be presenting this webinar on adaptive trail cycling in Maryland. We have a really great group of speakers tonight, and to ensure we get through their presentations in a timely manner, we're going to hold all questions till the end. And that way we can make sure we get through all the good things we want to show everyone. So a couple of words about Bike Maryland. Bike Maryland is a 100% volunteer-driven organization, and our mission is to promote bicycling, increase safety, improve conditions, and provide a voice for bicyclists in Maryland. We are a nonprofit and all volunteer. Our advocacy initiatives incorporate the promotion of pro-bicycle legislation across the state, and we've been working hard this year in Annapolis, actually, on several pieces of legislation. Some of you may have attended in February for our webinar on bike legislation in Maryland, and that was hosted by my fellow bike member, Dan, who's here tonight as well. The organization we recently brought on several new board members. I'm one of the new board members, and we have a new chair named Peter Gray. If you enjoyed tonight's presentation, would like to support our work, we hope you'll consider joining. We have some information here at the bottom of the slide about how to join. Tonight, I want to tell you we're going to hear from 4 people who have been involved in some exciting work in several state parks and 1 county park system. In addition to working on important legislation, Bike Maryland wants to support groups that are making better biking for all. Adaptive trail cycling allows people who might not otherwise be able to mountain bike due to mobility limitations get out on the trails and ride. So without further ado, to start things off, I'm going to hand it over to Mark Flaumlacher, who will tell us about his experiences as an adaptive trail rider. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because Mark does not have any slides.
Thank you. Good evening. First off, I'd like to thank Allison for putting this webinar together. And I'd also like to thank everyone involved and interested in increasing the access for adaptive riders. It's amazing how much awareness is being built and all the efforts to improve the experiences of adaptive riders. For some brief biographical information, I'm a 54-year-old father of 2 and grandfather of 2. My wife and I live on the Eastern Shore, and I work as an elementary special education teacher in Dorchester County. I became interested in mountain biking following a spinal cord injury in 2014 through a grant from the High Fives Foundation and a support network of friends and family. I was able to purchase my reactive adaptations Stinger in 2015. I started riding with my family and friends and realized pretty quickly that finding places that were really safe to ride and was going to be an adventure. On multiple occasions, we found ourselves in the middle of nowhere, trying to navigate some obstacle or get turned around on a trail that was really narrow and, with limited mobility to try and help with that, we really struggled. And it occurred to me that others might be going through, a similar situation. So I set out to rate the trails that I rode so that I could share my experiences with others. And I created a Facebook page called Adaptive Mountain Biking in Maryland. And I kind of poached a rating system that was being used out on the by another gentleman out on the West Coast. And I kind of adapted it a little bit for my purposes and created a rating system. So my rating system is pretty simple. AMTB1 means I feel it's good to solo ride. So you could go and ride this particular trail by yourself, and barring any, mechanical breakdowns or or other things like that, the trail wasn't going to jump out and bite you and create any drama. Um, the next level would be AMTB2, and that's a trail that you kind of you kind of have to know yourself, but I recommend that you bring somebody to ride with you as a support rider. There is potential drama, maybe some off camber, some spots where you might roll over, maybe some exposure. You'll make it down the trail, but might be nice to have a companion rider. And then AMTV3, which is you have to bring a friend on that ride. You are going to need support to get through. And AMTB3 doesn't mean you shouldn't go and ride the trail. And I usually review the trail and let people know what they'll be in for. But AMTB3 means it's going to be a little bit more work, and you're probably going to need somebody to put their hands on your bike to get you through that trail. Um, you know, the thing with the, maybe other people would benefit from that. And, I have to figure that the same people might feel the same anxiety I had. And, was that ride going to be a fun ride, or was getting me through that trail going to be the sport that day? So, some days your partners and you are ready for the challenge, and other days you just want to go ride. So, um, you know, the thing about accessible anything is that the benefits generally stretch beyond those of us with, permanently disabling conditions. Um, there's something called the curb cut effect. When accessible features are created, um, many others enjoy those features. So curb cuts, accessible pathways, accessible restrooms, ramps, and other features make things safer and easier for everyone. So go anywhere there's a choice between a ramp and a set of stairs and watch how many people use the ramp. My wife and I were at the zoo the other day, and I had to wait for a whole bunch of able-bodied people to walk up the ramp so I could go back down. It's very common. It's the easiest way to go up. Likewise, visit any trail system with adaptive trails. They're the most popular trails there. It's not a coincidence. Families with young riders, novice riders, those with temporary disabling conditioning, older riders who want to extend their riding days, they all benefit from these trails. And the crowds are proof of it. If you go anywhere where there's adaptive trails, they are the most crowded trails there. So when we build in access, we increase the amount of users that are going to enjoy the park or the trails. So it really increases everyone's enjoyment. We're not looking for paved trails or hard packed gravel trails. We're not looking for easy trails. That's not really the point. We are looking for people to have some consideration for the different types of riders and the different types of equipment that might be used on those trails, and building them with those riders and that equipment in mind. My mission started out as a service to my fellow adaptive riders, but I realized that creating awareness within the broader mountain biking community would be essential to increasing the access. So I began posting my videos on mountain biking sites around the area and really around the country, wherever I would ride. Um, I'm really excited to see how this interest has grown, and I'm humbled by groups like Friends of Patapsco Valley State Park and more, and Marty and David and Bruce Clippen and all those people that are really dedicated to helping this sport grow and increasing the access. I see participation in any type of adaptive activity as a product of three factors: awareness times opportunity times access, and that will equal your participation. So folks need to be aware the sport exists. They need opportunities to try the sport. They and then they need access. And the higher the level of any of those variables, the higher the participation. So I thank all of you again for your interest and efforts to improve our access to the outdoors. And I'll finish with a line from the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, I know I will come, but you'll see. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you so much, Mark. As a fellow mountain biker, I'm very moved by hearing your talk. And I very much appreciate finding out how you got involved in the sport. It's good
Thank,
stuff.
thank you very much.
Next up, we're going to hear about trail building and the trail building aspect of things. Um, I'm really pleased to have Marty Ferlinza and Dave McSpadden, who are fellow members of the mountain bike organization that I'm a part of, Mid-Atlantic Off-Road Enthusiasts, which is a regional group of several thousand mountain bike riders throughout the Maryland, Virginia, DC area. And I will say, I want to brag a little bit on Marty. I know Marty has opened the sport up for lots of different people. She's worked hard to get a lot of women riding and really made a lot of people feel welcome. And then I was pleased to meet Dave, her husband, later on when they gave a presentation almost exactly a year ago about this exciting idea of adaptive trails. And I was so interested in it, and since then have really been excited to learn more. And I'm really glad tonight to have both Mark and Marty and Dave tell us all the details. So take it away, Marty and Dave.
In the meantime, my name is David McSpade, and this is my wife, Marty Florenzo. We are the Adaptive Trail Liaisons for More, the mountain bike organization and IMBA affiliate club, as you said, in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. We're going to touch on all of these topics tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about sustainable trail design, adaptive mountain bike as a supplemental design standard to that. Who's a good candidate for riding adaptive mountain bikes? We'll talk a little bit about what makes an adaptive mountain bike different than other forms of adaptive bikes. And then we'll show some examples of those bikes. And we're also going to talk about volunteering and some upcoming events. Next slide, please. Okay, so sustainable mountain bike trails, they don't just happen to come into existence. They're actually very carefully designed. What they are designed to do is to both offer challenges as far as getting up and through the terrain, and also to reward us with views along the way and points of interest. So if there's a cool natural feature, the mountain bike trail is going to want to take you by that. But in addition to providing a good, enjoyable experience, they have to carefully manage soils, they have to carefully manage water, and we even manage traffic through some subtle visual cues that most people, if they're not in the design business, aren't even going to pick up on. Looking at the picture up there, you see you've got a trail that starts out on the right, goes around that tree, veers off to the left. And while that is visually nice to look at, there are other design intents behind that. That trail goes around to the right side of that tree and bears to the left, so they can also integrate what we call a rolling grade reversal. That is an erosion control feature that is going to direct water off the trail. Also, by having some meanders and some curves, it helps manage the speed that a rider might attain if the trail just went straight on through and was straight like a highway. So we really put a lot of thought into how we construct these things so that they are both good for your trail experience, but also work well for the environment they're in. And the way these trails get built is they are constructed in partnership with land managers like state parks and local parks. They can be built by government employees, professional builders, and often a combination of both, along with volunteer organizations like More. So More volunteers will go out and help you build trail. Next slide, please. So the CASA standard, or Kootenai Adaptive Sports Association, adaptive trail standards are a supplement to sustainable trail design. They don't replace it. We still have to create that good user experience. We still have to manage that environmental impact. But adaptive mountain bikes, they're longer and they need more of a turn radius. They can't make a sharp switchback turn the way another bike might. They have a longer wheelbase, which engages the terrain a little bit different. They are wider, I mean, a two-wheel bike is pretty narrow, so a trike is going to be wider than that. And adaptive bikes, because we're talking trikes most of the time, they are sensitive to camber. They don't lean into the terrain the way a two-wheel bike would. So taking a look at this, you can see there is a specification for that turn radius. And that turn radius can be bigger, but we don't want it too much tighter than that, or it's going to be difficult for some of the bikes to make that turn. The same goes for camber or the slope of a trail. You want a little bit of a slope to direct the water off the trail so that it doesn't pool in the trail or cause erosion, but you don't want so much slope that these bikes are going to tip over. You can have some slope in a curve. It's helpful to lean into a turn, but you also want to be mindful of the size of obstacle that might be in that trail. There actually is a spec for how big that rock can be in that trail so that it doesn't tip riders out. Next slide, please.
So, who's a good candidate for adaptive mountain bikes? It's basically anyone with a disability and they can ride. But there are some things they've got to have the cognitive and physical ability to quickly identify the terrain and the hazards, plan a safe line through the terrain, and execute that plan, braking and turning and pedaling. So they have to be able to stop, steer, and brake before they can even get out on the trail. Moving through the woods at these bike speeds isn't without risk. The trees are hard, gravity is constant. And, unlike some adaptive programs and other adaptive sports, we can't stop you as a volunteer. You're on your own. So you have to have those basic skills. And you have to have either, the physical and mental capacity to be able to do those things. Next slide.
So adaptive mountain bikes versus other sorts of adaptive bikes out there. So the adaptive mountain bike, it has to be a compromise of many things. It's got to have enough ground clearance to get over obstacles and rough trails, but it also has to have that low center of gravity to make it more stable in that rugged terrain. It's got to be wide enough to improve that stability, yet narrow enough to fit into the tighter trails. So those are all design compromises they make. The bikes have to be rugged enough to survive hits from rocks and roots, and they're going to have larger knobby tires, both for traction and to cushion the trail. Most of these bikes are going to have suspension, either rear or full suspension, and most of them are going to have e-power assist. Next slide, please. So the e-assistance, that is a reasonable accommodation. And what that does is it can compensate for weaker inactive muscle groups in that rider, and it's necessary for some trail obstacles. So picture yourself hand cranking up that hill to begin with. That's a lot of effort. And then as you encounter rocks and roots that the bike actually has to lift itself over, that's even more. And so that's why we need that e-assist to help through that. Next slide. So there are several styles of adaptive mountain bikes, and we're going to cover a few of those here. This is a recumbent hand cycle. So recumbent meaning you're in a seated position with your legs out forward. The ride position is very low, so that helps lower your center of gravity. And it's a hand cycle, so all of your braking and steering and propulsion, they're going to come from the hands and the shoulders. So you need that arm mobility to get those cranks to go all the way around, and you're going to need some grip strength to activate the brake and some of the controls that are also in that grip. Now, there are some custom options that can accommodate for different needs, but that's roughly the standard there. You don't need leg strength for this bike, and because it's a seated position, you don't need a whole lot of core to keep you in there. But you do need to be flexible enough to get in and out of the bike. So you're going to have to maneuver yourself, from your regular mobility equipment into this bike. This bike is full suspension front and back. It has 27.5-inch wheels, hydraulic disc brakes. It's a lot of fun, and it's got some e-assist to it. Next slide, please. So another style of mountain bike is a prone or kneeling hand cycle. In this case, it's the Reactive Adaptations Bomber. So a lot of these bikes, they have a regular handlebar with regular brakes. So when you're going downhill, you're going to have your hands up on that handlebar for the steering and the braking. But then they also have hand cranks that are right in front of you. And you may be wondering, well, how am I supposed to steer if I'm using that hand crank to get up the hill? Well, that chest pad that you see she's leaning on If she leans left or right on that chest pad, that will actually activate a little bit of steering. So it's not full control of the steering, but it's a little bit, and that might be all you need to help get up that hill. And then when you're going downhill again, you'll switch back to the regular handlebars to give you that finer control, that better choice of path. For this bike, you're going to need that arm mobility to both steer and brake, and also to hand crank that. And you'll need some grip strength to operate those brakes. This bike has, it requires a little bit more trunk control than you would in the Lasher because you're in that prone position. But it's a really enjoyable ride. This bike has rear suspension and disc brakes. It's got 24-inch wheels, and it's got e-assist, meaning when you're pedaling, it's going to help you a little bit to help you get up those hills. Next slide, please. Another style of bike is a recumbent foot pedal trike. This example is a TerraTrike ATV. Mark has a different style of bike, but the same idea. The propulsion is by the feet, and steering and braking are by your hand. So you got to have that leg flexibility to pedal, and you got to have that trunk balance to keep you in the seat. You're also going to need some grip strength to activate the steering and the braking. This bike is a great choice for people that can pedal, but they need assistance with that balance, because some people, they can make power, but they're just not as steady, and this bike helps with that. This example has mechanical disc brakes. Mark's probably has hydraulic disc brakes. This one's got 24-inch wheels, and this could be had with or without that e-assistance to give you that a little extra push to help you get up the hills. Next slide.
So riders come in different sizes and abilities, and so we have to utilize whatever we have available to make sure that they are fit for a safe and efficient ride. So these things kind of include stuff like just plain old straps and padding, foam, things like that, to position a weak or paralyzed limb, and sometimes, keep it from getting caught in something. We have binders and belts that we can put on there for added trunk support, and we can give them gloves for grip. So the bikes that we just showed you are part of the Friends of Patapsco Valley's fleet. But and they, while they don't have the special modifications, there are modifications for people who have very weak hand function. As David said, these bikes, you have to have some grip control to be able to stop a bike. But what about somebody who, like a quadriplegic, who might have very, very weak hand function? There are specialized brakes and specialized grips that can help, and you put them on those bikes so that someone with a weaker hand function can still have that ability to stop on a dime and control that bike. And I believe Mark has some of those adaptations because he does have the weaker hand control. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the funding for these bikes. Bikes aren't cheap. If you're wondering how much some of these bikes cost, they probably range lower end somewhere about $10,000, and they go up as high as I've seen about $30,000 for a higher end bike that has all the bells and whistles. And so there are many organizations that fund these bikes, both for individuals and for programs that want to have a fleet of bikes to share with participants. So some of those organizations, we have Challenged Athletes Foundation, Move United, and Christopher Reeves Foundation. And the idea for Friends of Patapsco is that a rider comes out and they trial a bike. Once they've established, they like mountain biking, which is usually pretty easy, and they want a bike of their own, then we give them information on available grants, and they would apply for those grants. Sometimes some of the grants might ask for a reference letter from a clinician like a PT or recreation therapist. Oftentimes, whatever program you're working with, and in our case, Patapsco, you can sometimes get a reference. I'm a physical therapist, and I can be your reference, or a recreational therapist if you know one can also be a reference for you. Also, adaptive bike shops have lists of these grant opportunities, and they're happy to share them with you. And that really does offset the cost of the bike. Sometimes it funds for an entire bike. If the bike's a very expensive bike, it might just bring it down to a bike that would be the cost of, say, just a regular mountain bike would be. Okay, next slide. All right, volunteering. How can you get involved? So if you're a mountain biker, you can just help ride. Come join us. With being a mountain biker, though, you do have to be able to have sufficient bike skills to ride these trails on your own. You got to be able to keep up. And the other side of that is you don't necessarily have to know a lot about disabilities. You just need a willingness to learn about people with disabilities. Most programs give you a really good orientation. And most of the participants are, happy to share, and they want you to feel comfortable because you're going to be helping them out. So that's part of that. Friends of Patapsco Valley is going to be sponsoring an ambassador program soon. And what that's going to entail is a training day where you learn everything from the disability aspect to the bikes themselves. And then we're hoping that we can have one-on-one with the bikes that we do have, where a volunteer goes out with a rider and they just go shred. But then what if you're not a mountain biker? There's still other opportunities. Join one of the trail building in your area, get out there and volunteer to help make some of the existing trail adaptive, or maybe, you're making a new adaptive trail, but you can always help that way. And if you are a mountain biker, join More. More maintains 750 miles of multi-use trails, and they're a huge supporter for adaptive mountain biking, and they help get grants for specific adaptive mountain bike trails, so they're really, really important to us. So, I highly recommend that you join that organization as well. Next slide. All right, so upcoming events, my favorite part. So Adaptive Mountain Patapsco has a couple events a year, and they're about an hour and a half long. You register for a specific bike and a time slot, and then we fit you for the bike. We teach you basic skills and braking and steering, and then you get to go ride the trails. Friends and family can come along, but they have to know how to mountain bike. Patapsco doesn't provide bikes for them at this time. You can look on their website, Patapsco for Everyone, to look for the dates and times and sign up for a specific time and slot, and then we go from there. And the last thing is, we're coming up for an adaptive mountain bike social. This is just something kind of fun and new, and basically it's for people, land managers, trail builders, bike shop programs, and adaptive athletes. And it's basically to bring everybody together to talk about adaptive mountain biking in Maryland. And we're going to ride bikes, and you get to ride the Tall Poplar Trail, which is the adaptive trail that was built in Patapsco for specifically to the CASA ratings for adaptive mountain biking. So we'll hope you'll come join us for that.
All right, I just want to touch briefly on that Tall Poplar Trail. So while that was the first trail in the Maryland State Park built to that CASA standard, it had that CASA standard in mind. It's not the only trail you can ride. You're welcome to try any trail out there, and Mark's been out there reviewing more trails. We're going to see if we can develop an inventory and a map to show you where to go ride. All right, does that cover it for us?
I think that's it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Great. And thanks so much. It was fantastic information. It's great to hear all the details. I have turned off the slides for a minute so that Janine can give us a wave hello, our next speaker. I want to thank Janine particularly because we planned this date and she agreed, but she was double timing tonight. She actually had to go to a work meeting just before this, so she said, "I hope I'm going to come a little bit late." So I really appreciate the dedication, Janine. At this
I'm happy
point,
to be here.
oh, welcome. At this
Thanks.
point, I'm gonna share my screen again. Give me a second, and I'll put the slides back on for your slides.
Awesome. So thanks for the introduction. Marty and Dave have been huge. It's been wonderful to be able to get to know them over the last few months and teach us so much about what we now know about adaptive biking and how we're going to bring it to Montgomery Parks. So we are the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Montgomery Parks. We're a bi-county agency with Prince George's County. Montgomery Park system has has 420 parks. I think that was the number the last I checked. And we manage over 240 miles of trails in our system. So we are a large park organization, and we love opportunities to get people outdoors. So we're excited to bring adaptive mountain biking to Montgomery Parks. Next slide, please. So about a year ago, I guess it's been about a year and a half, we were able to purchase a Lasher Sport recumbent hand cycle with e-assist. It's this beautiful blue beauty right here. And so we have that available. And then one of the other cool things that Parks has is that we also have a fleet of youth and adult mountain bikes that are available to use currently for specific programming opportunities, which I'm going to share with you. But we did select this bike because of its adjustable features. You can modify the seat and where the foot pedal sits. And so it, while most bikes can be fitted properly to meet the individual, this one can be modified a little bit quicker on, day of to get you out riding the trail. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges and opportunities that we've come across since getting this bike. One of the things, and this is just being, perfectly frank, I'm a certified therapeutic recreation specialist. I'm good at providing modifications. I'm good at creating individualized treatment plans. I could get people, fitted into a bike and making sure that they're being safe. But what I can tell you is that we don't know much about mountain biking personally from our team. So, we love the outdoors, but this was kind of new to us. So there's been a big learning curve. Everything from what needs to be included in our safety kit to like how to take care of the bike. So those are all things that we're really learning thanks to people like Marty, Dave, and folks from Patapsco Valley. We have a new adaptive sports specialist who will become certified in adaptive mountain biking at the end of April. And then the most important thing that we found is to just practice. And so come to find out, I actually really enjoy mountain biking. So identifying partners. We have amazing partners in parks and trails who have guided us about suitable trails for the mountain biking. They've gone on rides with us. They've transported our bike from point A to point B. So we're really grateful to them. We've been incredibly lucky to connect with Marty and Dave and folks from Moore and Patapsco Valley to learn all these resources. I'm actually happy to see so many folks on this call whose names I actually recognize. So I'm looking forward to seeing you out on our trails. And then like scaling the program and how it all looks. So as Marty said, these bikes are not cheap. And so we actually have been able to partner with Patapsco Valley State Park. And we sort of made an arrangement so that they can borrow our bike for some of their special events and we could borrow their bikes for some of our special events. And we hope this will be a win-win for all to just bring adaptive mountain biking to different areas of the state. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we will be officially certified in providing adaptive mountain bike rides at the end of April. And we are leaning on Marty and Dave to help us with finding volunteers and things like that. Excuse me. So I would believe we'll be ready to loan this bike out to users on an individual basis starting June 1. So if you visit our webpage, montgomeryparks.org/adaptive-equip, you can actually see all of our available adaptive equipment. We ask that you give us about 10 days so that we can coordinate our schedules, because obviously we're going to be the ones that are going to be coming out with you. And we want to make sure that we have ample time to get information about what your needs, strengths, and limitations might be with getting out on the bike, and how we can make sure that you're safe and successful. So we'll have this pre-consultation form that you'll complete just to get a baseline, and then we'll have a follow-up call with you after that. Of course, we have all the liability waivers. And then the day of, the hope is that we'll meet you out there at the park of the selected park, get you fitted for a helmet, make sure the bike is set and ready to go, and then we go for a ride. Next slide, please. So I want to preface this by saying that these specific trails have not been evaluated on like Mark's guidelines or the CASA guidelines that Dave mentioned, but our trails team feels pretty confident that the trails that are listed on this slide are going to be really fun and appropriate and safe and wide enough, and the surface is appropriate for you to take the adaptive mountain bikes out. I know that we took our lasher out to the Wheaton Way and Ravens Run just last Friday, and they had a really nice time and a really good ride. So we're also, we're excited to have people come and join us on our trails. We really want to schedule rides in this sort of trial phase over the next couple months before we officially roll out, to really just get out and ride some of these trails. Another neat thing that Parks has, since we've got, I assume, some bike enthusiasts on this call, is that Montgomery Parks has a really cool program called Roots to Rocks, and they have it's a two-part. One is that they just have youth mountain bike programming, so kids come out and just go for rides at different parks. And then they also have a Learn to Ride program, and that's for people who have never mountain biked before and just want to learn the basics of how to safely mountain bike. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we do have that fleet of bikes for both youth and adults, and of course, all the equipment that goes along with it, helmets and other safety measures to get everybody out riding on our trails. Next slide, please. And then we would like for you to save the date. Our first adaptive mountain biking day is going to be on Sunday, August 4th. The time is still to be determined, but we are going to hold that at Wheaton Regional Park. It's a great location because we've got some awesome natural surface trails that we can do some adaptive riding, but also we can probably use some of the more like the tandem bikes and some other bikes that Patapsco Valley has on our paved surfaces that are in Wheaton Regional. So details are coming soon. Definitely check out mocoparks.org/inclusive programs for more information. Next slide. And then here's our contact information. And this is just a little tee up, is that we do have adaptive kayaking programming. And so this is us out at Seneca Landing State Park, and in addition to a lot of other adaptive equipment in Montgomery Park. So we want to get you out in nature and seeing the beauty that it's in our parks. So give us a call. We'd be happy to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janine. I'll invite Dave and Marty and Mark to all turn their cameras back on. And then at this point, I'll ask my fellow meeting host, Dan, and also fellow Bike Maryland board member, if there are any questions from the chat. And if people have questions, they can put them in the chat.
When Mark mentioned the AMTB 123 trail system, there's a website called the Unpavement, and they have a good explanation of that system. And it's, exactly as Mark explained it. One means, you can probably safely do that solo, and then it ramps up the adventure from there, and the support you might need from a buddy riding with you.
Okay.
I know that they asked Janine the question about, the question is, how did Montgomery determine trail compatibility? I assume GIS, but any specific measures? I hope, Janine, it's okay if I say this, but basically, we got out the adaptive bike and we rode the trail. And we got through the trail, so we were able to say it was an adaptive trail. It's kind of like how Mark does this. And Mark actually graciously offers to come out and has come out to trails in our areas and determined if they are rideable and adaptable, and he'll rate them. He's working with more, with the liaisons of more, to do that, to come out. I hope I'm not speaking, I'm kind of speaking for Mark too, because I know he loves to ride. He's always telling me, I want to ride, I want to ride. So, he's always telling me, if you got a trail you want to check out, I'll come ride it. So that's kind of how we've been going right now with the trails that are out there.
Yeah, and to be clear,
All right.
rating is subjective, and that rating is, going to vary. So what you might consider to be a blue ski run might feel like a black diamond to someone else. So,
And so, Mark, I would love to hear your firsthand experience as well.
Yes. So getting into it, at first, I thought, yeah, it's a no-brainer. We're just gonna go. They got mountain bike trails here. Let's get and ride them. And and I mean, it didn't take very long to realize, yeah, that's not gonna work. So we struggled a bit, and then I was really fortunate to find a really good riding partner um, who really, he went with me a few times. He started to realize the challenges that we would plan rides, and he would maybe scope it out during the week and do like a blast through to see, which trails might work. We might go to Fairland or Schaefer or one of these places where it's really hit or miss, and he would roll through, and if he felt like it was worthwhile going, then we would ride. But yeah, it's my vision to see like where I could see this going would be, because there's so many different types of riders, and we all have different risk thresholds that we're willing to put ourselves through. So what I see, the big problem is, okay, do we fit? Are we going to make it down this trail or not? And that's like the first, barrier. Am I going to have to? Is someone have to put their hands on my bike to get me through this trail? And once we establish that, I think where it could go potentially would be, you would have AMTB green, AMTB blue, AMTB black, and then you would rate the trails based on their difficulty level, notwithstanding the fact that you might come to a tree where you can't get past and you're on a bench cut with exposure to your side, and now you got to figure out how to turn around. So it was definitely an adventure, trying to establish, but once we got our rhythm going, I think we started finding more and more places that you could ride.
So Dan, I'm gonna ask you, because I think if you're there, if you've been maintaining any of the questions in the chat, and if there's ones we haven't gotten to yet. And in the meantime, I
We
also
have
want
one question. I don't know that it was covered, was what does being a certified trail mean?
Okay, I saw that one too, and I wasn't sure if we'd gotten it yet as I was scrambling with the settings here.
I can try to take on that and say there really isn't a certified trail. Again, it's going to be a subjective assessment by people riding in the community and saying, hey, we think this is good or it's not. The CASA adaptive standard means you are building to those goals. But I don't believe we have any, authoritative, this trail is not adaptive. And honestly, Mark Flanaker and I have done some trails that were pretty challenging, and we're not necessarily looking for easy. We're not necessarily looking for perfect when we're out there. you know,
I think a key thing is kind of using the word accessible, that any trail that an adaptive mountain bike can get through, you can say it's an adaptive trail. But you could also use the word it's an accessible trail to people who use adaptive mountain bikes.
Yeah, I just to piggyback on top of that, just for for my rating purposes, I go a lot further than say Jeremy would, the unpavement. I saw that pop up. I go a lot further than he would go in how I would rate a trail 1 versus 2. I always tend to err on the side of an AMTB2 because, I mean, let's be real. I mean, I'm not going riding by myself. My ability at self-rescue is very, very limited. And if something were to go wrong out there, I'm not trying to cell phone somebody and wait a couple hours for somebody to come help me out. So I'm going to be riding with somebody else all the time. So, I take a lot of caution into saying when a trail is an AMTB1, because I feel like if I say that about that trail, I, take on a level of responsibility if somebody were to go out there and ride that trail and all of a sudden they ran into a bunch of drama. So I'm, very cautious about that. That's why I think it's important that it would be important to just establish, AMTB as far as the minimum standard, and then you can get harder, and that's why I kind of see a place where it's AMTB means you're going to fit all the way down that trail, and your bike is going to make it down there, and then rate each trail depending on their level of difficulty within the sport. Because as I said, everybody's got different risk factors. Some people just want to go for a nice casual ride in the woods. I like to go for a nice casual ride in the woods, but sometimes I feel like getting it on, and so I'm not as worried about coming across stuff, and the people that ride with me are game, and I make them sign a waiver at the beginning of the ride, and it just goes with it. So but yeah, I did want to mention one thing, because it's the first I heard about the bike lease thing in Montgomery County. And I really feel like that is a game changer. The providing the opportunity for people to get out and ride outside of those special, clinic events is huge. And I just feel like, I mean, I'm already putting rides on the calendar with my boys, because that to me is a game changer. So I really appreciate that. I think that's probably one of the best things I've heard in a long time. That's awesome.
So Janine, that brings up a question for what for other counties or municipalities that are thinking about doing this. First of all, are there any other county level programs that you know of in the state of Maryland? And what advice, you gave some advice from the perspective of the staff person, but for, let's say, like the municipality itself, what advice would you have for counties that want to try to do this as well?
As far as I know, I don't believe there's any other counties in the state that have an adaptive mountain bike. I know there are several that have other types of bikes that you can borrow, including like, I think they're called foot pedal bikes and others. The advice I have, I've really had to learn a lot. So it's finding the people that are smarter than you, who know more than you, and who can really help you to, build these programs and give us guidance. And, I know Marty and Dave are very passionate about the sport of adaptive mountain biking. And so they've been wonderful partners in this journey, but know that it's going to take time. Unfortunately, it's not going to be like what I thought, that you're gonna buy a bike and it's going to show up and you're going to be riding in a couple weeks. You have to learn how to adjust the pedals and use the gears, and there's just things to learn, and then you also have to feel comfortable teaching somebody else on how to ride that bike. So just practicing and eating a slice of humble pie, I guess, is my advice for now.
So, and this is a related question that I see in the chat from Nick Owens. This is an excellent question. So Nick is asking, are there any resources that show how many adaptive riders there are out there that could be used as a justification for funding or action? I similarly was wondering, do we have any numbers of how many adaptive riders there are either in the state or in the United States right now?
Well, as far as I know, and I think because adaptive mountain biking is so new, at least in our area, there isn't anything like that. The best I can think of to do is maybe looking at the rehab hospitals and rehab facilities that where and programs where potential adaptive riders would be, and in that case, you know, you can get numbers for people with disabilities that would be potential riders, but I'm not sure I would be able to say that there's actually a resource for that right now, at least here. I'm sure there's probably much more of it out west and in other states, but I don't know of anything yet.
Yeah. I would say that when Friends of Patapsco Valley hosts an event, it books up full every time.
Yeah.
There's a waiting list at 3 times as long
Yeah.
as the capacity right now.
Wow.
I think the data would be skewed on that anyway, because if you don't have any access, you're not going to be able to do it. So, I mean, it's like asking me how many people use a wheelchair in a building without a ramp. 0. Okay. So, you know, I don't really know that we could, you know, try to justify that in terms of numbers, but I do know that anytime you've increased the access for anything, it's gone up.
So another question that I think builds on this idea, Bob is asking in the chat if you have had any unfortunate user experiences with other types of trail users. And if so, what would your guidance be on how to handle the reaction of other trail users who may have had negative reactions to you?
So when we've been out on the trail and I've gone out as a user to test some of these trails, I haven't had any experience like that. If anything, what happens is that able-bodied people, you know, see it and they're like, "Oh, I want to ride that," and they kind of think that this is something that, you know, that everyone can ride, and then, you know, and then that can get into issues about what's allowable on a trail, on a mountain bike trail, that sort of thing. So we, you know, we try to educate, and usually when we just tell them about it, they're very cool with that. I know there was one video going around that, you know, of somebody who was on a mountain bike and they saw someone on one of these bikes and got all upset about it. And the guy was saying, "Hey, you know, this is the only way I can do this on the trail." And to be honest, this comes into play with accessibility and, you know, your ADA and things like that. You know, this is reasonable accommodation so that someone with a disability can get out on a mountain bike trail. We're not making it anything other than getting someone with a disability out on a mountain bike trail. And that's how I
Yeah,
would
well,
talk to somebody.
I've personally been, you know, had encounters with thousands of people on horseback, hikers, bikers, all the different types of trail users, and I've had nothing but, you know, positive experiences. You know, I tend to ride courteously, and I'm always looking down trail, and you know, I know how to manage around horses, you know, so that kind of limit the danger to their riders. So, you know, if you're riding along and using your bike courteously and treating others with respect, I think everybody kind of, you know, treats everybody with respect out there. And I second what, you know, most people are genuinely curious about, you know, the bike and, you know, all that.
Well, I think unless there are any other questions, and again, people can feel free to add them to the chat. I want to thank everyone for tonight, for your presentations. This has been a incredibly interesting conversation, and I'm very, very excited about all the things that you all are doing, and anxious to find ways to support and help it. And I do think this is a really important part of better biking for all. So I would like to thank everyone for attending tonight. This it was a great turnout, and we will make this video available on the Bike Maryland YouTube channel so that people can watch it in the future, and you can share it with your friends who want to know more about it. And with that, I will tell everyone thank you for coming and have a great night.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thanks for listening.